Well, welcome to the Christian Contrast, where we talk about how walking with Jesus leads us to live differently than the world around us. And I'm very excited here to be joined with Evangeline Sanders from Assure Pregnancy Clinic, the Director of Development.
Yes,
correct?
That's right. Yeah.
It's wonderful to have you here. We're going to talk sort of the parameters of what we're going to talk about is pro-life battlefronts right now, because you're on the front lines of that, and I'm excited to hear from you. And so just to start off, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and about the role that you play at Assure Pregnancy Clinic?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. It's such a joy to be with you. As you said, my name is Evangeline Sanders. I'm the Director of Development at Assure Pregnancy Clinic. And we are a pro-life pregnancy clinic that works at the front lines to provide free medical resources for women that are experiencing unplanned pregnancies. We also provide resources, options counseling. We have a parenting program that they can go to if they choose life. And obviously, if they've experienced a pain of abortion, we do have post-abortive courses and things like that as well. So I've been with the organization about 1.5 years now. Prior to that, I worked in London, working kind of more in the public policy side of things. My background is medical ethics and medical law. So this worked really, really well. And as a director of development, I get the really wonderful task of being able to connect with churches and individuals, organizations, people on the outside, just to get them fired up for what we're doing in the clinic. I think sometimes it's so easy to think, oh, there's those people over there that are doing that, without realizing the really important part that Christians on the outside can play in this really important life-saving ministry.
Yeah, and that must be an exciting thing, because I would imagine that there's a lot of churches that sort of, at least in word, would say, yes, we care about we care about the unborn, we're a pro-life church, but may sort of feel, like you were saying, like there's a separation. They do their thing over there, we do our thing over here. And so have you experienced some just benefits from ways that you've been able to open eyes and open doors for ways that those kind of partnerships can happen?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. We like to see ourselves as an extension of the church. In an ideal world, every single church would have a pro-life pregnancy center on their campus, for example. That would be the goal.
Absolutely.
To have that everywhere, where the church is the place where people go to in that moment of crisis. Sadly, that isn't where we're at in our culture. And so having the center away from the church sometimes helps people that can feel judged. Sometimes, they just don't want anyone to see them. They don't want to be known, to come somewhere that is further away from where they may be known, to come to a safe haven, to come and discuss their situation at that time. But as I said, we know that right now we are in a huge battle in culture, a battle for truth, a battle for righteousness, understanding what the Bible says and what the culture says. And so we're not, kind of blind to thinking, oh, we're doing this thing by ourselves. Actually, it's a spiritual battle that we're in. And so we need the church alongside us in the work that we're doing. There is a lot of prayer covering that goes into this, not just for the workers and the people in the clinic, but for the women that are coming in, the fears that they are feeling, the anxieties, all of those things. We can give them, material help, but really there's a deeper piece that is needed that can only really come from Christ alone. And so in that, we really do need the church to come alongside us in that. So
yeah, and I love that. There's 7 things you said that I hope to
so
follow
sorry.
up. No, it's great. Yeah. I'm just like, oh, which one? So here's where I'd like to start kind of next is just, you mentioned the ideas of, fear and some of just the issues going on for women who are coming into Assure or are in a sort of a crisis pregnancy, a surprise pregnancy, not sure what to do. As those of you who are on the front lines, I would just love some insight. What do you see as sort of the hindrances or the obstacles that make it harder for women in those situations to choose life and just make it much more of a battlefield like you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, kind of going back before I answer that question, I'd say that when I first joined kind of the Frontline ministry, in my head you have this picture of what this person that's going to be experiencing an unplanned pregnancy is going to be. It's going to be, I don't know, this 14, 15-year-old girl that's scared out of her wits. She doesn't want to tell her parents, all of these stereotypical situations. But when I came into this ministry, I realized that wasn't the case. We were seeing women right from 14 right up to 45, in all different situations of life, different stages of life, some in relationships, some not in relationships, some that were married.
Right, some married women.
So that really kind of blew that picture out of the way. And so we were like, okay, so we can't just think about this one person and think, okay, these are the things that they're going to be facing. But, for some of them, it was career. obstacles. For the 15, 16-year-old, sometimes it was, I want to play softball this year, and if I get pregnant, I can't. And that is a big deal for someone at that age. I know that sounds trivial, but it's not, because they're like, all of the excitement, the experiences I want to experience are going to be thwarted if I'm going to have to go through with this pregnancy. Then you have very kind of basic things. I don't have shelter. I don't have a roof over my head. I don't have a job. I don't have the family backing. I don't have the support. All of these things are I don't. Compounded on the other side of, I don't want to be labeled as that person that ruined my life because I have a baby. That's kind of the psyche of what is going on in a very short period of time, that it can just be really overwhelming for a lot of women that come in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And like you were saying, just a spectrum of different things that are playing into it. And just as you and the women at Assure have the opportunity to be in those different conversations, I'm just curious, have there been different things that you've been able to observe, just sort of trends of like, these are the things that tend to bring breakthroughs? Because it might be different again, it might be different than what we would assume. Those of us more on the outside might think, well, if you just prove this or give them this book or show them this picture. But have you observed like these tend to be either the sort of the actions or the tones or I don't mean arguments in a contentious way, but just sort of the lines of reasoning that tend to help or change minds in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, they have all of these different things that they come in, but I hope you notice in all of them, none of those are really centered around the baby.
Right.
Do you see what for a lot of people that come into the clinic, they still, and I don't want to say this in a condescending way, but it is very much that the baby's still not real.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? It's still the superficial thing that is coming in the future, but it's not that they actually have a baby in them now. And so that's a big thing that we try to help them to come to see, that this isn't, oh, hey, should you go ahead and do this and then maybe get pregnant? This is, you're already in that position, and what is inside of you is a living, breathing, unique individual with potential and characteristics and all of these other things that I find a big light bulb moment is when we take them into the ultrasound room. When they see that heartbeat, when they hear those like very, very fast beats that are very different to our own. This isn't your body. This is another body that is inside of you, that I think almost helps them break free from just thinking about the immediate important, but kind of the urgent threats that are there, to think about what is important in the long run. And so that's always a big thing that we like to speak about with them, just to say, hey, I know that this is scary. I know that this isn't something that you thought about, but now that we're in this situation, let's talk about what's actually going on. Because I don't think they really want to talk about what's going on. I wouldn't want to talk about what's going on if this wasn't something that I planned.
Sure,
it's a very normal thing, but really getting them back into seeing, hey, this is what is the real situation. Now let's look at the other things. Let's start at the important part and then work out, because otherwise we're trying to get everything else in place and we forget that we're dealing with a real human being.
Yeah. See, it seems like it's almost, if I'm hearing you, it seems like it's almost this thing of sort of allowing the wider view to come in, and then once there's that, once it's beyond just right now, this is all I'm thinking about, and the baby suddenly becomes real, it sort of opens up the possibilities of seeing more options and more ways forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was thinking about this just as I was, preparing. So many times in our culture, and even in academia, things like that, we talk about the risk of pregnancy. We talk about, how to have safe sex. We talk about all of these things, like as if pregnancy is an unnatural outcome of sexual intercourse.
Right.
And it is. And for some of these women that we're speaking to, they're just absolutely shocked that they could ever be pregnant. And I think that's a wider cultural thing that we need to talk about.
Sure.
Of like, well, and especially as Christians, God designed sex for a reason. I'm not saying, only have sex if you want to have children, but it's in marriage, it's in a certain setting where it's done in a very a beautiful way, where it brings new life, all of those things. And what we're dealing with most of the time, 87% of the women that we are serving are unmarried. So we're already seeing a departure from the way that the Lord has taught us to do things. And so you're seeing then we're having to step further back, because we're not starting at the same place of understanding what a baby is, what is marriage about, what is sex about, what is a pregnancy, and so it's very softly, with kindness and compassion, bringing them to the point of realization of, hey, I know that this isn't something that you think that you planned, but this is where we're at. This isn't an unnatural thing. Like, this is the most natural thing that your body is doing, that only you can bring this baby into existence in the whole world. No one else is ever going to have this baby, things like that.
Yeah, and that's powerful. And one thing, because I think you alluded to it a little bit, just there in all subjects, there are different sort of cultural trends that happen. And, I remember when I was younger, the sort of the tagline for pro-choice people was the safe, rare. What was it? It was sort of the safe, rare, and something else.
Yeah, I
should, but you know what I'm talking about. So that even those who are pro-choice advocates were saying this is an unfortunate thing, and that, at least in my observation, has really severely changed. Where it's no longer sort of, all right, it should be safe, it should be rare, it should be private, all of that kind of stuff. Where there's the shout your abortion movement, which may be more on the extreme side, even of the pro-life idea. But I don't hear that safe and rare stuff anymore. So I was just curious from your standpoint, because not only being with Assure, but just with your background in kind of the more maybe academic side of things and the thoughts and reasoning going into it, do you see certain trends that are sort of like, these are the battlefronts now, just in the realm of ideas that are influencing us maybe in ways that we don't realize?
Absolutely. A thing that I was really kind of struck by, this is when I was doing my master's, was the different types of examples that they would give us when we were speaking about personhood and autonomy and things like that. There wasn't this thing of, oh no, this is an unfortunate situation that we need to help women in. It was, well, how dare you tell women to do something they don't want to do? That was a really big shift. I'm thinking of Judith Jarvis Thompson and her, kind of defense of abortion, where she speaks about the violinist. The violinist. Yeah, the violinist. And basically portray the violinist to be this parasite that is sucking the life out of this woman who hasn't chosen to have, that's the big thing of, like,
which goes back again to what you were saying before with our sort of dichotomy, sex over here, procreation over here, nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, but no real understanding that actually do we have a moral should we not have to care for our own children?
Sure.
A very basic thing. Like, why should a parent have to feed their child when they're born if we don't have the right to actually maybe look after them when they're in our womb too? It's this whole kind of switch of thinking about, this isn't just that the mother's baby. We're thinking of it as this person that's sucking away the life of the mother. And when that comes into it, you think back to years of women being oppressed. You think back to years of women being mistreated and things like that. And so it's very easy to confuse the two, to suddenly say, well, men have oppressed women, and so now why are we letting babies oppress women too? Do you see what I mean? You're confusing the two together. So, men, you need to stay out, and actually women need to decide to make their own choices. And I'm not saying I'm against women's right to choose in that front, but what we're dealing with now is this conflation of the idea that actually pregnancy is an enemy to the woman. Rather than, hey, actually a man forcing himself on the woman, that's the issue.
Absolutely.
That's something that we really need to take seriously. But then suddenly the baby is the enemy. And you're seeing that more and more in culture, because what they're saying is, why are men forcing women to have children? And I'm like, if men were forcing women to have children, we should be really against that.
That'd be a big problem.
That would be a huge problem. Actually, a lot of people should end up in jail. But, what we're dealing with now, though, is after a woman has chosen to exercise her sexual autonomy, whatever we want to say, we're now saying that that the baby isn't a human, and that seems to be where academia and the culture is coming to. It's not just that, hey, even if the baby is a human, we still don't need to force women to do something.
Yeah.
And that's a really scary place we're in. And I think that not just in this area, but when it comes into gender ideology and things like that, we're really fumbling so many things that the Lord has brought in as right and wrong. And so when we want complete autonomy from our own sex, for example, why would we not want autonomy for anything else outside of that?
Yeah, you can definitely see how those different things, the progression and the connection between the different things. And it is, sometimes, I know sometimes I feel a bit overwhelmed by it, because like you said, we'll deal with situations. You will on the front lines. Sometimes as a pastor, it'll be different, but I'll be dealing with something and saying, all right, we're right here, right now, dealing with this, but I want to hit the rewind button for like 17 years, and then maybe we could set up a worldview, because like you're saying, it does go into saying, the idea of being shocked that pregnancy could be a result of sexual activity, it's like, how smart are we that we're shocked by that? That seems strange. And the idea, like you're saying, of seeing pregnancy as sort of an unnatural state instead of a natural result of sexual activity. And then getting into the whole idea of what is our responsibility to our children. It's like, gosh, we got to back up and deal with big worldview issues. And at the same time, for all of you, it's like, but I've got this woman right here, right before me. We can't do that. We got to figure out how to do this in real time.
Yeah.
While also, I know for me, just as a dad, I'm constantly thinking, how do I on this side of it look to prepare my boys for, treasuring the idea of purity and waiting for marriage, waiting for sex until marriage, but then also having the idea of saying, and if you don't, and if a girl gets pregnant as a result, here's what we're going to do about that, because we would much rather, we treasure life, and we don't want you to feel like you've got to sweep this under the rug because of shame or fear or things that you talked about. So it is a challenge to figure out. There's the big worldview side, which I know it's like you're doing parenting classes. Like you all are looking to say we want to address that too. I know in the past, Asher's been involved in even like abstinence thing. We want to deal with that, but we also want to say, here's where we are. We can't change what's going on right now in real time.
And I think in real time, a lot of women just need to hear that really reassuring thing of that you're not alone. The mantra of the pro-choice thing is your body, your choice, but actually what it tells them is that it's your body and it's your problem and you're in it by yourself. And actually for a lot of the women that come in, I remember one of them actually just saying that after her time at Ashore, she went home and she could sleep.
Wow.
She'd been up for the last few weeks when all of this was going on, and she had no peace and she couldn't sleep because every worry was in her head. Every doubt, every judgment call was there, where she was just feeling, I can't do this. I'm by myself. And just, her coming to the clinic and someone else saying, hey, it's not just your problem. We're in this with you, gave her that ability to be like, you know what, I can breathe.
Wow.
And now I can make the decision that's right for me and my baby. And that's really powerful to let women know that they're not alone in this. And I think we do a disservice to women when we tell them that it's their body and it's just their choice, because that does very often become, I'm by myself. I have to make this decision by myself. I'm going to be the only one that is going to have to live with the consequences, without thinking, actually, there could be help out there. And we're in 2022 now. Yeah, that's where we're at. There are so many options. There are so many resources that are there. There are monetary things that come in if you do tend to keep your child. So I think what we really need to come back to is we need to help women make the decision that's right for them with by first taking away the fears that don't allow them to be able to make good reasoned decisions, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. Yeah. And I'm glad you said it. I'd never sort of put together what you were saying before. The whole my body, my choice is a very isolating idea, where it seems like the intent behind it is saying nobody else gets to boss you around, but where it leaves you is the full weight of the burden on you, which none of us want with anything. Like I don't want the full weight of the burden on me if I'm trying to figure out where to go to lunch with a friend, let alone something massive like a child.
Yeah.
One thing, this is a little bit of a tangent, but hopefully not really. I've heard, and I was curious if this has been your experience. What I've heard at different times is that when women are in a situation where they're trying to figure out, all right, I'm pregnant, I'm not sure what to do. Maybe there's more options than what I'm thinking of, but sort of like there's abortion, there's keeping the child and raising the child, there's adoption. What I've always heard is adoption is the hardest sell for women in that situation. And I was curious if that's been your experience, and if so, if you have some insight, because as Christians, we look at it and we're like, it's such a profound, beautiful thing. We have people at our church who have adopted. One of our elders and his wife just within the past year adopted a baby, and it's so beautiful. And yet, from what I've heard, it's a very hard thing, even harder than keeping the baby and raising the baby themselves.
Yeah, I would say that it's actually even a hard thing for our advocates to even talk to the clients about. It can feel really awkward because it feels like we're telling them to do something they don't want to do for something we want them to do. Even more so than even keeping the baby, because at the end they get this prize, they get this beautiful baby.
At least you have the baby at the end of it.
Do you see what I mean? And so suddenly what we're trying to do when we're talking about about adoption is that we're saying, hey, I know that you don't have the means, or you're saying that this isn't the right time, whatever the situation is for you to be able to raise the child. But could you, and this is the big thing could you sacrifice the next 9 months of your life to give a child away to someone else? And when you're young, or when you're in that situation, you're like, I don't even want to go through pregnancy.
Right.
Let alone go through the whole thing of giving birth. And then I have to give the baby away. Basically I'm like, I'm abandoning my baby. That's what it seems like in this, in the way of thinking.
It's like
even
a lose on
it's
just
a
all the
lose.
fronts.
Whereas somehow, and I think this is where I want this conversation to go in this, is that somehow abortion is seen like as if this neutral option.
Right.
And it's not. They see it, well, that would just erase what's happened. That's an easier out than having to go through 9 months of pregnancy, because everyone's going to see me. I'm still going to have to not be able to play softball. I'm still going to have to be able to tell everyone. And there could be fear involved in that. There could be shame involved in that. So actually getting to the point of going through with an adoption is really difficult unless they get to the point of realizing this is a human being that I want to protect. That's the hardest point, is getting them to see that the baby inside them isn't just a blob of cells. The other side has done a great job of really, suddenly it's a blob of cells, and then when it comes out, it's a baby. What happens in that meantime? So many of our women, we now have 3D, 4D ultrasounds from 10 weeks. And just
for 10 weeks? I didn't realize that.
Weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from 10 weeks, we have 3D, 4D ultrasounds. And by then, you can see, a very beautifully formed baby. The limbs are already there. There's brain activity. There's, the eyes are there. All of these things. And it's shocking how many women are so completely blown away, because they're like, I didn't think it would look like that at 10 weeks. Why do they not think that? What have we been telling women? What have they believed? And so that is the bigger battle of getting them to see the humanity of the unborn.
Yeah.
Because once you can get them to see the humanity of the unborn and get them to care, then adoption is possibly an option. But otherwise, it goes back to what am I comfortable doing? And getting through 9 months of a pregnancy, and then giving away that baby that's been inside of you. It's a sacrifice. Pregnancy generally is a sacrifice.
A
sacrifice. I'm sure your wife can
can
allude to that. But in this case, it's even more, because your life really is on hold for something that you're not really preparing to have in your life forever. If that makes sense.
Do you have let me ask another question I wasn't planning on asking. You alluded to earlier that there is that there is a trend in our culture of saying, all right, men, you need to shut up about this one. Which I understand logically in my head. I also object to very strongly, and I don't practice that I need to shut up about it. But just within that, I wonder if you have some insight into what it looks like in a helpful way, not just for men to say, you can't tell me to shut up, I have an opinion too, but to be helpful advocates along. Because I know with Assure, there's a lot of women at the front lines, and it makes perfect sense of why, you would figure a woman in that situation probably wants to talk to another woman about that. But do you have some insights into both how men can be part of that frontline ministry, and also even within that, how men can think more broadly about what does it look like to lend my voice to the unborn and to the vulnerable, recognizing that our culture right now says men need to just not talk about this?
I think, when you introduced this podcast, you basically spoke about how we're supposed to be living lives very culturally different to be what Christ has called us to be. And I think that really is a foundation in many things, but especially in this area, is it goes right back to the Garden of Eden. What did God tell men to do? What was their duty of care? What's going on? That is a God-given authority that God has given men to be able to step in and say, no, this is too far, or yes, we're going to do this. And so much of our culture has really stripped men of that authority. And so I'd say, especially to men, if they call themselves Christian, and we're wanting to do things in the way that Christ wants us to do this, it's not to absolve ourselves of any authority and to step back. That's not caring.
Right.
Actually, the caring thing is to say, you know what? I'm in this with you. I'm going to accept the responsibility with you, and I need to help you feel safe and to not feel alone. all of those things that I'm like, this is an age-old tactic that Satan has come back in. Let's just leave women to do whatever they want to do, and men, you just sit out on the side and in the corner. And all of culture is shouting at men to do that too. And I really understand it, because a lot of men are like, well, I tried and then I was just yelled at. Sure. And I'd say, hey, I know that that's really difficult, but get over it.
Right.
Like, at the end of the day, you're going to face God, and then you have to
use an outdated phrase, man up.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Like, I know that it's not going to be nice. This is the culture that we're in. We can't pretend this isn't where we're at. But the silence of men, the silence of women, and especially I'd say the silence of the fathers in this has led to so many abortions happening. So many women later would have, have actually told us, I would have kept the baby if he had spoken up.
Yeah.
I would have, because he said, I can do whatever I want. But really what I heard from that was, if this doesn't go well for us, he's going to continually blame me for the rest of my life.
Now the full thing is on her because I didn't weigh in on it.
And so, really to go back to that of like, don't listen to what culture says is the role of man. Listen to what the Bible says is the role of man. Listen to the way that God has asked you to sacrifice your life for your bride, for your girlfriend, for your woman, whatever it is, whatever situation you're in at that moment, to realize that actually that is a really chivalrous, that's a really strong, that's a very caring position that you're in, and to not it's very easy to just sit back. It's very easy because you're applauded for sitting back. You're applauded for sitting down.
Well, and how powerful, I mean, like you're saying, that's what happened in the garden, presumably. Right after Eve eats, it's an Adam who was with her right there, presumably sitting back saying, her choice, I'm not going to interfere.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so we don't take our model of man from Adam. We're not supposed to. We're now supposed to take it from Christ. And what did Christ do? He got into the messiness with us. He took that all the shame, all the guilt, all the burden, everything that we have. And I really think that there is a huge spiritual atmosphere that is being lost, if that makes sense, in the churches when it comes to men actually stepping into their identity as men of God, as Christ in their household, things like that. And so I'd say, helpful things that men can do in this situation is to come back and actually say those words. I know this is a really scary time for you, but know that I am with you in this. This is a beautiful baby that has come. Things like that are really reassuring, so that women don't feel the fear of not knowing what's going to happen. Because it's not necessarily I don't want the baby. Most of the time, it's I don't know how I'm going to cope with a baby. So
well, that was powerful. I'm glad we got to talk about that. All right, final question. Just for anybody listening to this who's thinking about what's my part in this. Like we've been thankful to have a partnership with Assure, and we've got people who volunteer, we've got people who pray and who give. For somebody that's just hearing this and saying, I want to do something, but I don't know. Can you just give some insight into what are the different ways to be a part of this ministry and advocating for the unborn, caring for the vulnerable, including the frontline stuff, but maybe even apart from the frontline stuff?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing is don't ignore that feeling that you have in you. Like I do think that the Holy Spirit stirs things in us at the right time. And I'd say firstly, just pray about what that would look like for you. What we're doing here, at Assure is very much frontline grassroots ministry. We're right here. But there are other avenues too. You have people that are doing sidewalk counseling. You have others that are, lobbying at Parliament. You have so many different options. And I think that they're all important in the fight that we're in. And so to really understand, like, okay, Lord, what are the specific gifts and talents you've given me, and where would I best fit to go in? That would be the first thing, because I've seen some people come to volunteer with us and they're just so gung-ho, and I'm like, it's almost a bit too much for the women that we're facing. But you know what? That's fine, because maybe the Lord has you somewhere else, and that's good too. But so firstly, take that time to pray about where in this fight the Lord wants you to be. I definitely believe he does want every Christian to be involved in this fight, but where is it? And then secondly, once you've kind of done that, and if you then think actually maybe Assure is the right position for you, we always say that we partner in 3 different ways. So the first thing is we partner in prayer. As I said earlier, this is a spiritual battle that we're in, and we really need the prayer support. Kind of every day we are facing unknown situations to us at the start of the day. We start praying, but we don't know what the situation is of the women that's coming in. But we know that the Holy Spirit does. And so we have a way that you can sign up. I think it's prayforbabies.org/assure204. I'll try and get that up or something like that.
We'll look to add some links.
That would be great. But what that does is that we send out an in-time prayer request when the advocate is meeting with the client and they are making those crucial decisions for life. And we know that is a really, really important time, because that's exactly when Satan's going to want to come in and put every seed of doubt. So the first thing is pray. Pray for us at the clinic. Pray for the women that are making those decisions. Pray for the women that have chosen life, that nothing else will come in and make them change their decision. The second way we say is volunteer. We have different volunteer positions. We have, as I said earlier, we have the client advocates, and they're the ones that meet with the client daily in the clinic. Volunteers will sign up for a 4-hour slot in a week. They'll come every week at the same time, and they are trained to know how to have those conversations. You don't need to come trained. Don't worry, we'll do that for you. But we also have other positions like the Bridges Parenting Program, and this is a great place for men to get involved.
Yeah.
Boy, do we need more male volunteers. I know it can be really nerve-wracking to sit in a room with a woman speaking about what your decisions are, and I know that there are some men that can do it, but generally we have female volunteers that do the client advocacy. But when it comes to the parenting classes, we really need men, especially fathers, to come in just to help the young men understand what it's going to be like, to help them know how to support their partners, help them kind of go through that stage of mourning, maybe their single male life or whatever it is, helping them understand what the beauty is of fatherhood. So that's a really great way for men to get involved. And then other volunteer positions when it comes to, event help or admin help, that we will take anyone. We will definitely find a place for anyone. And then lastly, of course, we are a nonprofit. We don't take any money from the government. So a lot of our funding comes from Christians and churches and organizations like that. And I think just kind of putting that into perspective is that we're not just, hey, we need money just because we need money. Right now in the Inland Empire, there are 6 family planning, centers that are there, and they're open 6 days a week. They are staffed much longer hours. We're open 4 days a week, and there's 2. There's 2 in this area, so this is what we're dealing with when we're trying to say, what are the obstacles for women coming to our clinic? Well, I mean, our funding is an obstacle because we're not open enough. We don't have the availability that Planned Parenthood does. I was actually looking up just with a friend of mine when to take a pregnancy test. What's the best time of day to take a pregnancy test? And I'm sure many women that are experiencing unplanned pregnancy are going to do that. That's a really basic Google thing. And first thing that pops up is Planned Parenthood. And they tell you you can come into the clinic, you can get this pregnancy test, this, that, and the other. But beware of the crisis pregnancy centers. Yeah. And they talk all about it on their website. And I'm like, well, their marketing is better than ours.
Right.
All of the, that they are able to get the women quicker than we are because their funds are greater. And so I'm just there like, okay, Lord, we really need more people to come onto the front line and see that this is a needed area of ministry that we need to be funding, so that we can remove the obstacles that are stopping women from being able to come to a life-affirming clinic rather than a clinic that's just going to sell them an abortion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so those are the 3 things. So to pray for us, to volunteer with us, and if you can, to start partnering with us with a monthly pledge, things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, and like we just talked about, we're going to add links into the YouTube video just for all those, not only for those, but also just for anybody listening right now that sort of like, this is where I am right now. I need to know where Assure is. I need to make an appointment. Or any man listening to this saying, I can suggest this to my girlfriend, to my wife, to the my partner who's pregnant right now and is not sure what to do. Because like you said, we just want more people to know about this wonderful place, that they can come, that they can be supported, that they can be helped, that they can see their baby, that they can have people walk with them, not just through the decision making about, am I going to keep this baby, but all throughout with the support and the help and the parenting classes and all of that. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this and for all of your frontline work that we're so thankful for. And thank you to those of you that took the time to listen or to watch. We do episodes of The Christian Contrast every 2 weeks. We'll be back here in 2 weeks with another episode. And we love comments and feedback. So if you have feedback and you want to give that, you can just comment, and you can find other videos like this through our website, lbf.church, or just by going on YouTube and searching for them. So thanks so much for taking the time to listen, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.